Hello, my name is Benita McElhannon, and today I will speak a little about the Jerusalem Temple, the Sanhedrin, and the synagogues. The temple, Sanhedrin, and synagogues were all interconnected and vital in the formation of industry, civic duties, and worship to the Jewish community in Jesus' day. According to our textbook, The New Testament in Antiquity by Berg, Kohik, and Green, the Jerusalem Temple was of extreme importance in first century Judaism and was built with such grandeur to be a building of great national as well as religious pride. During Jesus' life, Herod, the Roman king, also known as Herod the Great, was in the process of renovating and expanding the Jerusalem Temple to a size of 360,000 square feet. If you can imagine the size of 9 football fields, you will get an indication of the temple's massive size. To give you a further idea, www.bible-history.com describes the temple to be about 35 acres in dimension. Our textbook suggests that size was not the only awe-inspiring thing about the temple, but explains that much of the city's economic strength was infused in the operation of the temple. 24 priestly families, which included over 7,000 priests, toiled side by side with over 9,600 Levites, performing daily operations such as maintaining the structure, performing sacrifices, and conducting worship programs. The temple regularly received tithes from the Jewish community, and coupled with income received from the daily sacrifices, the temple was a major source of industry. This made the temple extremely wealthy. Because King Herod understood that any revolt from the Jewish community would likely be located at the temple site, he built a fortress in the northwest corner and staffed it with Roman troops. The fortress, named after Mark Antony, was situated in a manner that denoted dominance over the temple courts, a clear message given to deter any form of rebellion. Every community needs structure, and the Jewish community was no exception. This community's leading members constructed order to civic life and provided leadership by appointing men from its ranks, as well as select members of the priesthood, most often Sadducees and Pharisees, to create a high council called the Sanhedrin. Wikipedia gives the Greek meaning of Sanhedrin as sitting together and describes the assembly as being 23 to 71 men in number. This council of men was structured much like God commanded Moses in the book of Numbers 11:17, as the scripture details the directive to gather 70 of Israel's elders that were known to be leaders from among the people and have them act as judge and jury to decide the people's cases, as in a courtroom. The Sanhedrin, as www.jewishvirtuallibrary.org defines, were supreme religious bodies in the land of Israel during the time of the Holy Temple, and further states that these civic experts met daily in the temple, accepting the Sabbath and the festivals and the eve of the festivals. Much like the Supreme Court in our time, the Sanhedrin were the final authority on Jewish law. Our textbook explains that around 586 BC, before being rebuilt by Ezra and refurbished by Herod, Solomon's temple was destroyed by the Babylonians, and Israel was exiled. Upon their return to Jerusalem, they had to formulate an alternative place to worship, as the temple was not present for sacrifices and Israel was still somewhat scattered. Meetings during this time concentrated on personal study, corporate prayer, and worship. Synagogues were built for this purpose. www.thattheworldmayknow.com, in an article by Ray Vander Laan, reads that during the time of Christ, a synagogue could be found in most Galilean towns. And we also read in the Gospels where Jesus taught and performed miracles in the synagogues. Jesus also debated with the Pharisees in the synagogues. However, our textbook also teaches that everyday life in Galilee did not revolve around the synagogue or the temple, but instead attention was given to personal purity. Study and observance was demonstrated and modeled by families who would continue in lifelong faith. This knowledge helps us to understand how Jesus was so effective outside of religious institutions and chose instead to teach on hillsides and grassy plains where crowds would gather to listen and learn. However, yearly festivals were dependent upon synagogues and the temple. The temple, Sanhedrin, and synagogues were vital to the Jewish communities. Yearly sacrifices and festivals were performed or observed at the temple. The Sanhedrins were essential in matters of the law, and smaller synagogues served the people when the temple was unavailable to them. These establishments provided industry, civic structure, and places of worship, everything needed for a thriving culture.